right, so with this domain, we start to jump into some of the things that ISC2 wants you to know for the big test, the big exam. And because of that, you'll need to know a little bit about a lot. And I'll go ahead and focus in on a lot of the things that we typically see on the exam. I'll focus in on those over the next however long it takes us. So this domain's law and regulations, compliance, and it gets into talking about the different types of legal systems that are in the world. International, this is an international exam. It's typically given in English, but it's given in a bunch of different other languages. And so they go through the different types of law. And so the different types of law that we jump into, two of the ones that are right off the get-go are the ones that we typically are the most familiar with, are the criminal law and the civil law. So what are the distinctions between these two? And the biggest distinction between these two. The top one, the criminal law, just like the name kind of implies, this typically means that you're going to the pokey, right? You're going either to jail or prison, one way or another, if you get convicted, right? Because you're innocent until proven guilty. But you've committed a crime and you're likely going to do the time, is typically what people say. Whereas civil law is more leaning towards things that you've done as far as two people that may have to deal with a contract or interpersonal issues. Beef you got with the government or the government has with you, and the interpersonal issues. Yeah, great way to look at it. So that's the difference between the two. And then there's this other one that we have to at least talk about called administrative law. And what do you think this deals with right here? Yeah, so the administrative law, typically it is put in place to try to keep the honest person honest. So the federal agencies, but also, laws and regulations, different requirements that have been put into place to make sure that people are treating people fairly, doing things safely, like OSHA, for instance. But yeah, like mandates as well, like Sarbanes-Oxley, Graham-Leach-Bliley, the Federal Privacy Act, uniting, strengthening America by protecting it using the USA Patriot Act, those kinds of things. And so at a high level, these administrative laws are put in place to try to protect us as citizens, as well as lead by example from the law, or at least. And so at a high level, the CISSP would need to know the difference between criminal law, civil law, and administrative law. A lot of times when I think of these two, perfect example here is O.J. Simpson. I remember being a much younger man at that time and watching that debacle unfold, and knowing okay back then about the differences between the different types of laws, but the glove didn't fit and he was acquitted in criminal court. And then I think at least two families went after him for a wrongful death in civil court, and they were able to get the money. So that's kind of the examples that I usually will think of. But for our purposes, what we want to at a high level, remember 10 miles out wide and an inch deep here, we want to focus in on what the computer crime law is. And it is getting less gray. It still is quite gray to many people, but it's getting less gray. So let's talk about that here. What is considered a computer crime, and why is it important for us to at least talk about this right here? So about every 18 months, computer chips typically get much more powerful. The size of stuff starts to shrink even more, and we just keep getting better and better with the types of computing that we're doing, being more productive. And so anytime that a computer is used to actually help in a crime or aid in a crime, that is what qualifies it as a computing crime. And so as we go through, there's some specifics here that just let me go here for a few minutes. We kind of got to set the ground for, and then kind of move up the food chain from there. So a long time ago, federal rules of evidence were published, and they've been updated, since then. But they have different articles on guidance on how to actually, bring in evidence, what's hearsay, what's best evidence, and because of that, at a high level, just knowing the different vernacular is probably prudent enough for you to be able to answer the 3 to 5 questions from this entire set of knowledge that you'll need to know for the exam. And then it kind of started to grow with computing. So the administrative laws that started to come into play, you kind of see, back in the mid 80s, I was playing with my Atari 800 XL and the Commodore 64, TRS 80, as well as a few other things. And around that time, they came up with the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Then it was the Computer Security Act. And then it was the Protection Act, the Abuse Amendment, the Espionage Act, the FISMA, which many of you are probably familiar with, FISMA, down here in 2002. And I think it was updated again in 2004. Yep, down here at the bottom, you can see that it was updated or amended back into 2014. I think that was by the Obama administration, as well as some other thing. And from that, the idea that computers are necessary for us to have a piece of the puzzle whenever we're putting together cases against people that do stupid stuff, or people that are trying to get away with doing things and maybe they're not stupid, right? We see it from time to time. I think about what's the dude from Subway, the guy that used to be in all the commercials that lost 1,000 pounds or something. I remember watching the news like that week or reading an article about it, and it was talking about how a friend had sent him a picture, or at least that was the initial story, and then they had a search warrant for his house, and then they seized his computer, and I was thinking to myself, homeboy did something. And then it came out that he was into some bad stuff, and but yeah, any time that a computer is used to in a nefarious way, we have to be able to figure out ways that we can use that evidence to convict that person or to get them off. And that's where terms like non-repudiation come into play. So that was the Fraud and Abuse Act. National Information Infrastructure Protection Act. This is the long time ago. It gives the infrastructure like railroads, gas pipelines, power grids, water, sewer, and gas, telecommunications, all of those protection from the bad guys. So if you mess with these, this is a pretty bad national infrastructure issue that you would be charged with at least some sort of felony, which means that you're probably going to be doing some prison time. So with this, it kind of set the precedent of, hey, we're really doubling down on what we need to do to protect our critical infrastructure. And it led to the first passing of the FISMA, which gears more towards the contractors and federal agencies to actually try to have some sort of baseline level of security for their organizations, for their agency or their organization. What it's almost, having been dealing with the contractors, the defense industrial base, we now call them, and having been doing federal contracts for a while, I can tell you that this was a joke for a lot of contractors. They read about it, and yeah, they had to check some boxes off, whenever they were winning the contracts, but actually having that baseline level of security and enforcing it, even though this was put into act, I don't know if the practice was actually there until DFARS later on came out, and then the NIST 800-171, and then now we're sick and tired of getting all of our prototypes here in the United States stolen by our adversaries, like blueprints and our fighter jets and our warships and stuff like that. So then the CMMC is hopefully going to be the enforcement of that. We'll see. And then moving into when DHS came up with the responsibility for the modernization of information security for federal systems. In 2014, they came up with what they called the NIST 800 series and started to enhance that a little bit. Many of us are familiar with that. And then they came up with this thing that's called the National Cybersecurity Protection Act, which allows you to coordinate between federal and civilian organizations, and really opens up the olive branch to share information between each other. That way we don't both have to do the same research and pay the same research institution twice for the same research, but also we can share information, and it with the intent that it hopefully is going to bring things to light much quicker. So at a high level, those are many of the administrative laws. Out of those that I just mentioned, unlikely that you'll see any of those on the exam. And if you do, it'll probably be FISMA. So if I know that a couple of you were saying that you couldn't fit things into 5 to 7 words, but all of these I would know 5 to 7 words on, all of the ones that we just covered. And then maybe 20 words on FISMA that you could at least talk intelligently, but more importantly, answer a test question.